So here we are for another Zoom call, Memories of Miriam. And this time we're speaking to a Mr. Daniel Cohen, who lives in London, who's known Miriam a long time. I've known Daniel a long time, but I wasn't as close to Daniel as Miriam was. Daniel's a special friend, and I'm sure it'll become apparent why that's the case as we talk with Daniel. So Daniel, please go ahead and share us some of your memories of Miriam Scott.
Yes, I found this rather difficult. It's such a distance. You know, if we were in a group of people, what one person would say would bring up another memory. I am thinking just at the moment, I'm reading a rather lovely volume of poems called Girl by Ruth Padell, and it reminds me of how much Miriam was a poet, how she, I think, was pretty much, well, not how I was introduced to her, but I knew some of her poetry from the early days when I knew her, which would be early to middle 1970s, I suppose, is when I first knew her. She was she lived in Richard Wright's flat, and Richard was part of my men's group, and I think it was Richard's birthday when I first met her. It may have been just that she was around when we met at Richard's. So that's the original thinking of.
Yeah.
And also thinking of, and again, I met Asphodel through Richard, though I didn't, that was just met. I got to know her, Asphodel, in a different situation. But Asphodel's relationship with Miriam, as I say, was very important to both of them.
Yeah. Can you say something more about that?
Well, before Asphodel and I were involved, I think the last partner she had lived with David Scott, Miriam's father, for a while, and that's presumably when she got to know her. And I think the feeling is, well, as you say, that Miriam thought of Asphodel as the mother who I don't remember much about her relationships with her mother, but she wasn't present emotionally particularly. Well, was she present physically? I don't know. But so that was part of it. And I think also Asphodel had the relationship with Miriam the same kind of way. And another thing that occurs to me, just talking about generations and mothers and daughters, I'll talk about it more later, is that I always felt that Miriam's marriage to John Harris, I always felt, no, the person Miriam wanted a family to be part of her family was Katie, not John. And of course, that is what happened. I don't know whether Miriam even kept up with John at all, but she certainly very much kept up with Katie.
Yes. Yes, very much so. Yeah.
I think that was very important. When I first knew Miriam, it was after her daughter had died. Died very really. I think, what was it? She had one stillbirth, was it, and one daughter who died within a few weeks of her birth. But
yeah, birth.
Yes, it was the second after the second one that I first got to know her, and I think that's part of the relationship with Richard. So she was around quite a bit. She was also involved with Neil, who was I was sharing a house with Neil and various other people at that time. And so I tended to see Miriam quite a bit just through that, and that I think was how I got to know her. Not so much through Richard, because we didn't meet at Richard's all that often, but because Miriam was around a fair bit in our place.
Yeah.
Neil was not particularly interested in poetry. I was.
Well, tell me what was
After
special and noteworthy about Miriam. Why are we talking about her now?
one of the things I remember about Miriam, it always just a little phrase that she uses. I thought, yes, her way of looking at the world and her way of using language. She had been in the Czech Republic. Was it just long holidays? I forget. But anyway, she once described me as like a Baroque cathedral in Prague, and I've always remembered that. It doesn't exactly feel like me, but just that description of anybody that's, that's like that.
Yes, indeed. She
I
had
think,
Czech words because she was a
yeah,
baby uh, when she was in Czechoslovakia. So she
mm,
would say things like Ježiš Maria and things like that, Jesus
mm,
Christ. And
mhm,
it's very funny. And those words were there even as her mental capacity faded.
mm,
Still these Czech words would come through. It was very funny.
hard. I find this difficult talking about people. Somehow I realize just for myself, that I sort of accept people as uh, they are there, and the connection is there without my necessarily describing it. We could go on to talk about the storytelling, because when I introduced her to storytelling, I forget quite
Did you?
I forget quite what it was uh, that made her interested. We must have been talking about writing and uh, things. And yes, I said that she should come along to Tinewith, or I talked about Tinewith, and she said she wanted to come along. And
Okay, well, that's really interesting because that's where we met.
I
That was
know,
that was the beginning for us. You came to our wedding. You were a
I
very
know.
important celebrant of our wedding in the woods.
That was an amazing event. Yes,
It was an amazing event. Tell me about it.
I I remember that was one of the. Sorry, this is. Uh, I'm getting something silly on.
Oh, I've lost your voice, Daniel.
What?
Yeah, you've got
What
it back
was that?
now.
What was the topic? It's animals, I think it was.
Yes, it was
Was it?
totemic animals.
Yes, I thought so. Because that was a green man. I was not her. I was green man. I remember uh, the actual wedding, the separation of the men and the women, which you might think is Orthodox Jewish, but it was actually more a pagan gathering the different aspects.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember that. I remember a little bit on that one, because uh, I was annoyed with Miriam for I uh, I had a biscuit in my pocket, which was part of my storytelling, and she was sort of uh, grabbing me. This was before uh, the actual wedding, but I was dreadfully afraid that she was going to squash my biscuit, because it was so important that it did not go into crumbs until I had used it as a prop. Anyway, yes, and I'm just trying to think of her work. I mean, she had this because in Leeds she was well dealing with the housing. I can't remember quite how she got that job. What what was she doing immediately before?
Well, she had different jobs in Leeds, and then
Yes,
she
well, the
uh,
housing major one. That was for the
she was employed to start up this charity, and
yeah.
it took off under
It
her
really did.
stewardship.
It really did take off. Yes.
Yeah. And it took off because I think Miriam was very well suited. Her social skills, her ability to talk to people and enlist other people's help. She was very good at that.
Mm.
Yeah,
Perhaps you should ask me a question or two
yeah.
specific.
Do you have any memories of her at Tynewith, the National Writers' Centre that
Yeah,
we
I know.
all went to?
Yes, I mean, I know it's one of the things of my memories that they tend to they tend to blur. Yes, I mean, I do remember her and some wonderful tellings that she did, and some that you and she did together. But again, particularly, but
Yeah.
I couldn't say anything very specific.
She had these gifts in her, the way that she told her stories. She
Yeah,
definitely had an ability to communicate with people, to achieve that heightened voice and language that we're trying to
yes,
do in storytelling.
she did indeed. I mean, what the handless maiden was one that she was, I think that she regarded as important, which is not one. Then, and she and I both are both keen on the angel Lila.
Yeah,
Brings the children down from the upper realms and tells them all the secrets of the universe, and
yeah.
finally says shh, which is why children cry when they realize they've lost all that they knew
Yeah,
when they're born. That's one. That's one of the stories that I suppose because of her relationship with the children as part of it, but it meant something to her, or it always meant something to me. One of the Jewish uh, tales, yes.
yeah.
Her conversion, yeah, yes, that's another thing that reminds me. I was there on uh, her conversion to Judaism. I was there for the actual ceremony.
I know, I've seen the photograph, Daniel, and I was
Yeah,
really surprised that you were
yes.
there.
Well, exactly that. And all right, it's not my religious practice, but it was if it was for Miriam, it was something that I needed to do.
Wow.
So
Come
there we
all
are.
the way up
Yes.
to London.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the story. I mean, the story I remember. This is me rather than Miriam. Is I have the old uh, story of the I'm sorry, this really isn't directly Miriam, but it's still relevant. But the old Jew who was caught up in court as a witness, and what is your job? Says the judge. Uh, I'm a minion maker. A minion maker? Yes. When there are 9, and I come, then there are 10. The judge says, oh, well, when there are 9 and I come, then there are 10. And the Jewish guy says, no, another Jew. So this is what I said to Miriam when she converted. So now we have Miriam the minion maker.
Ah,
Because it's uh, that form of Judaism. She uh, wouldn't be excluded from a minion. Yeah.
wow. When I met Miriam, she was being offered the position of vice president of that Reform synagogue.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. And you can see why they would want her to be vice president because there's a lot of social activity involved in that role of keeping tabs
Mm,
on everything. But uh, she did meet me and she did come to Wales, so she didn't become the vice
yes.
president after all. Tell me more about that time of Asphodel and Miriam.
And there's very much. I, a clearly strong relationship. Miriam was not part of the political group that Asphodel and I were in, so it was more a social meeting. I think I'm talking Miriam in general to say that the social skills, the kind of slightly off center viewing of the world, I would describe it. Again, it's perhaps it's a poet's eye. You see things differently.
Mm.
I'm very fond of her poems, particularly the ones about the death of the children. Lucy, give you, I've forgotten the titles, but I've still got a copy of the pamphlet that she and Mary and Asphodel did, If Women Could Speak. And I'm really pleased.
Yeah, I haven't seen that actually.
You've not. I
No,
don't know if I've got a spare. If you've never
no.
seen it, I'll see if I do have a spare. I might have given away my any spares I have.
If we meet up again and have a lunch or something, maybe you could bring it
Yeah.
along. We could look at it.
Yes. Oh, I can certainly do that. But
Yeah,
as I say,
because I think that's actually going to happen before very long anyway.
yes,
I hope so.
yeah. I think we must. I'm just thinking. I think we must have gone to some of the British Museum exhibitions together, but I can't remember which ones. While she was still in London. What did we do when we? I visited her in Leeds quite a few times. But I'm trying to think what we did about other than just chatting. But
Did you go to Chapter Arts? Not Chapter Arts, Seven Arts Seven Arts.
I don't remember it.
Because I went to an arts place when I visited up there. Did you go to the park, Roundhouse Park?
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
We certainly did that. And there are other people I got to know in Leeds. I'm trying to think whether Miriam was involved in my getting to know them. I don't actually think she was. I think though I think she was in that same circle, but I think I met them through the alternative socialism movement, which was.
Well, I still want to know more about Asphodel and how Miriam was in those times, because this is all way before I ever met her.
Yes, I'm finding it difficult. I think that there were not that many occasions when we were all three of us together.
Mm.
But I do know that, as I say, as I've said, that it's a pretty strong relationship on both sides.
Well, it does sound amazing, the influence that Asphodel had on Miriam. And
Yes.
Asphodel really changed her life
Mm.
when she and was there when she needed her, when Miriam
Yes.
needed her.
The other thing was that was saying when we looked at the programme of the prodigal daughters, that my friend Helen, who was one of the people I was sharing the house with, was she wasn't a poet, so she wasn't quite in the prodigal daughter as such, but she was a singer, and she was at one or two of the PD meetings as a participant, as a singer rather than poet. We produced one of the you showed me one of the leaflets that had that in it.
Wow. Yeah.
But what was I going to say? I mean, I think Miriam sort of almost, well, it was a new career, the storytelling for Miriam. I think it
Yeah.
was really important to,
When we
because I
met,
mean, she was still writing poems,
yeah, yeah.
the Lion Man, but somehow they I felt they took a back place to storytelling. I think
She
in the
knew a
end.
lot of stories by the time I met her.
Yes,
She had
yeah,
a lot of stories in her pocket, in her story bag.
yes.
Yeah. I guess she was just ready for storytelling by the time it
Oh
came.
yeah, yes.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, that's fine. That's brilliant of you to do
But
this with me.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm not saying all that much because this is me. Me that I just almost don't exactly take people for granted, but I'm don't analyze or specifically remember details to that extent.
No, no, but I wanted the flavor of how Miriam was back then
Mm,
and all that because she was special, and
yes.
I'm trying to put a finger on those qualities of why she was special.
Mm.
Yeah,
I think I would say if you wanted it, it was just the way she looked at the world. I think as, as is as much as anything. Not
yeah,
perhaps the way she related to people, but uh, her vision, her vision of the world.
yeah. This is emerging as a bit of a theme from these talks that different people are saying the same thing, that Miriam had a very particular way of seeing the world. And
Yeah,
I think that's one of the things that really appealed to me about Miriam is that
yeah,
all these terrible things that happened to her in life, and she overcame all of them
I
and
know,
was not going to be beaten down by adversity. And
I
to
know.
me, it was incredibly impressive.
Going through, going through so she went through so much. Yes, well, God, I mean, you know about it, and I don't need to speak about it. But she had quite a hard life.
Yeah. Well, Daniel, I think that's enough for today.
I probably, I
I
think,
really,
yeah,
I really appreciate your effort and willingness to do this. It's great.
yeah. Well, I hope. I mean, you're doing it primarily, you say, as a way of keeping in contact uh, with her in a way, rather than as no, you're not doing a memorial tape or anything.
Well, I'm hoping to have a page, and on that page there will be these different interviews that I'll have
That,
edited.
yes, that would be good.
Yeah. And so it'll just be a YouTube page for people who are interested in Miriam. That's all.
Yes.
Yeah. Not a general public kind of
No.
thing.
Do, do we have any recordings of her reading her poetry?
I've got audio recordings. Uh,
Would yeah,
uh,
not video. Well, with that one would want. I think it's always worth uh, having a poet read their own work.
yeah. And then I did the music for her poems as well. So I've got a
Yes.
lot of recordings, and I
Mm,
will be putting those up probably on a separate page, but there'll be a link. So if you want
good.
to hear Miriam's poem,
Well, I
you can
certainly would. Yeah.
or you want to read Miriam's poem, there'll be different links, and so
Yeah,
that's what I hope to achieve slowly, at my little snail's pace.
take, takes time. Yes.
Yeah, but I'm working on it, and I'll get there. This soul realignment that I'm doing now, I didn't realize, but the point of doing the soul realignment is to try and do healing on Miriam's soul so that the next time she comes back, she's not
Mm,
carrying all these wounds from previous lives. Um,
yeah.
so I'm in the middle of doing that now, and it feels
Mm,
like a wonderful thing to be able to do for her. Um, so I hope there's something to it.
oh well, yes. There's
Yeah,
something. There's something to it, whatever that something is. Yes.
yeah. I'm
Okay.
going to stop recording.